Mr. Skunk Baxter, it's such an honor to be here with you today,
Thank you.
and
Thank you for your hospitality.
yeah, it's incredible to be sitting next to such a legend in the guitar world, and I know.
You're too kind. I know better than that, but thank you.
And I'm just so excited to talk to you about your career as a session musician and talk about your work with Steely Dan, the Doobie Brothers, Joni Mitchell, Donna Summer, and much more, including your solo record that you've only recently released here in the last few years, and just really highlight the importance of your work and in the shape that you've kind of put on popular music by way of your amazing guitar work. So
Oh,
I'm really honored to have you here.
I never thought about it. I just picked up the session checks and kept going. Okay. That's been a great run, I
Yeah.
must admit.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to start first with a band that you're very closely associated with, Steely Dan, the great Walter Becker and Donald Fagen, and the record Pretzel Logic. And I know that you were playing even earlier with Can't Buy a Thrill, and we're going to get into a song that you actually hipped us to, which was an unreleased track from that Dallas that we'll get into
What
a little
great
later.
song that is.
Which is really, really cool. It's crazy that wasn't a part of the release.
Well, it was good enough that Poco covered it right away as soon as they found it.
Right, right. Yeah, so we'll get into that, but I'd love to start with Rikki, Don't Lose That Number. Obviously Donald and Walter are on that tune. Also, Dean Parks is credited on that tune. Do you remember much about working on Pretzel Logic or that song in particular, or anything that was remarkable about how that song came together?
Well, Walter and Donald, they do their writing.
Yeah.
And then they would come in and everybody would listen to it and sort of figure out what they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Rikki was an interesting song because when I looked at with my ears, when I looked at the music and the song, I wanted to compose a solo for it because I think a good solo should be a composition, should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And trying to structure it in such a way that it reflected the song, which is kind of half bluesy, but then there's an element to it that has some chords that are not your typical chords in a 1-4-5 blues song. So I thought it would be fun to start out, kind of with a straight ahead pentatonic scale blues, and then sort of get to the point where people are just comfortable with that genre and then take a left.
Yeah.
To get their attention back, to get them to listen
Yeah.
to the chord structure of the song.
Yeah.
And walk them through that.
Yeah. Well, you do a really elegant way of kind of getting out of the solo, which is, I think, the place where, all of us guitar players struggle. And it's just the most beautifully stuck landing in terms of kind of how you're kind of doing like almost like a double stop sort of thing, but then treating it almost like as an arpeggio. And I'd love to know if you remember like what kind of guitar you used on it or any of the gear that might have been used to get that sound.
Yeah, I used a Stratocaster that I had, the same one I used on my old school, actually, that I had routed out that afternoon in the parking lot of Valley Sound because I was at my day job.
Okay.
Building and repairing guitars. And slapped some electronics in it. And then we did my old school. And I used that same guitar for Rikki.
Do you know what kind of, was it pickups that like you wound yourself?
Yeah.
Or, okay, so
I wound them on my mom's sewing machine.
Really?
Yeah.
No idea what the output might have been? Were they pretty hot or were they kind of standard for?
Fairly standard.
Uh-huh.
Nothing super nut.
And these are all
probably in the
coil?
7 to 8K range.
Okay, and these are single coils or you had a humbucker as well in there?
No, they're all single coil.
Okay, got it. And do you remember what kind of amp you might have been using on that?
Yep, a VT22.
Wow.
That's one of my favorite guitar amplifiers.
Okay. And was that something that you used consistently on that record, or was it
a lot?
Okay.
It was either that or a deluxe reverb that Paul Rivera had modified.
Okay.
Which I used in most of the sessions I did for other people.
It was, do you remember what stage mod he did? Because he used to have, like, depending on how invasive it was, there was like stage 1 was really basic, and like stage 4 was like effects loop and
No, it
channel
was just a
switching.
pretty straight ahead mod.
Okay, maybe just to give it some different character, or
Had
maybe more
had a
gain.
master volume control, and as far as what Paul would actually did at the time, I said just do it, because so many people had said go talk to Paul, have him do a deluxe reverb and a Princeton for you. So that they were small enough so they were studio friendly.
Yeah.
The VT22 is a mean amplifier.
Yeah.
It's powerful and loud.
Yeah.
So taming it down for some of the sessions was a little difficult, but it sounds so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And had those 417, those Altec Lansing 417B speakers, which have tremendous top end, but it's so clear. And I don't know, I kind of like that. Much of the stuff that I did, I would just plug directly into the console.
Yeah.
Because it sounds just fine to me.
Yeah. We'll get into it later, but in the solo on Hot Stuff, it sounds like it was DI'd.
Nope, that was into whatever the amp was in the studio at the time was a deluxe reverb. Wow. So I just turned everything up to 10, plugged in.
Wow. Well, I'd love to listen to a little bit of some of your parts on Rikki. Don't Lose That Number, if you don't mind, and maybe some it triggers a memory or something like that. But just to kind of give also like our listeners a kind of reference point of some of this stuff. And so let's throw on the headphones and have a little listen. I've consolidated it down to kind of the key parts, and feel free to chime in anytime. The microphone is running, and we'll be able to hear it here.
Rikki, don't lose that number. You don't wanna call nobody else. Send it off in a letter to yourself. Rikki, don't lose that number. It's the only one you want. You might use it if you feel better when you get home. You tell yourself you're not my kind.
We will get right back to the interview, but first I'd like to talk to you about one of the sponsors that makes these interviews possible. It's our friends over at Sweetwater and their amazing program, the Sweetwater Gear Exchange. It's a platform where you can buy and sell used gear with your peers, and the amazing thing about it is you don't have to pay any seller fees as you ordinarily would with most other platforms, so long as you decide to put your earnings onto a Sweetwater gift card. And if you're somebody like me that's constantly buying and selling gear, it's a great way to basically create your own layaway program by way of these gift cards to accrue money and savings and then redeem them on the gear that you actually want. I've already purchased 2 guitars this way using the Sweetwater Gear Exchange, a 1961 Fender Stratocaster Custom Shop Relic reissue, and a Gretsch Smoke Brian Setzer model. Absolutely amazing guitars that I fully funded by way of the Sweetwater Gear Exchange. I recommend that you create an account. You can do so for free, start buying, and start selling. Now back to the interview. Sorry for the abrupt switching over to the solo there, just in order to make it somewhat consolidated so that we can kind of listen to the primary parts. So were like those fills and things like that, was that also you doing the fills kind of in the kind of the main verse parts as they're kind of transitioning to the chorus?
I think it was a combination.
Of you and Dean Parks, or?
Dean was playing acoustic.
Yep.
And so everything electric is me and everything acoustic is Dean.
Okay. And then did Walter also like go in and add stuff to it, you think? Or is it...
I don't think so.
Is he playing bass? On that? Okay. Wow. And with that stuff, we've interviewed Dean, and and a few other players that have played on some of these records. And one thing that they say is it's a very laborious workflow. Did you find it to be that, or was it pretty easy as far as sessions go?
Well, I think Becker and Fagan certainly had an idea about what they wanted. And to me, that's, well, every session I ever did, that's what you expect.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a couple of times when you go into a session, like we'll talk about Donna Summer, and they
Yeah.
said, just do what you want.
Yeah.
But they had a pretty good idea. But it was also, the idea was Denny and I were the guitar players, and the deal
Yeah.
was, while I was still a band, before we all kind of left and did other things, the idea was to come up, use your expertise.
Yeah. Yeah. So they kind of gave you the freedom to kind of choose how you wanted to orchestrate
Oh, yeah.
that solo.
Oh, yeah.
And was it like, did they make you do a bunch of different takes to kind of say, okay, we prefer this one and not this one? Or was it just like it was a couple of options and that was about it?
I didn't do that many takes on this because I pretty much had the idea of what I wanted.
Yeah. Okay.
I spent some time before.
Right.
Putting some effort into it.
Yeah. Well, it's just such a great solo. I mean, it's
Oh, thank you.
It's incredible, and it's wild to think that you did it all yourself, and with the pickups, and basically created this Strat that became part of the sound.
I'm a big fan. I worked at Dan Armstrong's guitar shop for years, and built and customized guitars. Dave Schechter and I had our own guitar shop in Boston for a while.
Wow.
And even the Roland guitar was a guitar that a project that I did with Roland.
Yeah.
I just got tired of carrying around 5 or 6 different guitars, so designed a guitar that has everything from acoustic 12-string to Telecasters to drop tuning. So I just got sick of carrying around guitars.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of like to have the connect with the instrument.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that for sure. We'll get right back to the video with Skunk Baxter, but before we do, let's take a closer look at that beautiful Stratocaster of Skunk's and zoom in on those nice guitar strings that he has. And wouldn't you know it, Skunk has a signature set of DR strings from our friends over at DR. Now, if you want to use the exact same set that Skunk uses on his guitar, or if you want to try other sets like Jared James Nichols, who uses the Dragon Skin Plus, which combines the longevity of a coated string with the rich, full tone of an uncoated string, these are going to be an amazing set to check out. All the details for DR strings, where to find them, and which ones Skunk uses are all listed in the description. Go over and check that out. Now back to the interview with Skunk. Did you use many pedals back then on any of these records, or was
Not
it pretty
much? Okay. Not much at all. I just kind of plug in.
Yeah. So like if there was any reverbs or delays or something, it would have been like just as simple as it being like the reverb on a deluxe reverb or something like that.
Well, usually I would pretty much record dry because we had the immortal. I mean, we had Roger Nichols, who there is no better engineer in the world.
Yeah.
So I would leave it to him. If I would say I'd like some reverb.
Yeah.
And I'd say, okay, I want an EMT. I want 150 millisecond pre-delay.
Yeah.
We'd talk about it, and he would set it up.
Okay.
Because I much preferred the quality of the effects from the studio.
Yeah, I get that. What about on Night by Night, another song on that same record? Do you remember much about that particular song or that session? Presumably they weren't on the same day as Rikki, Don't Lose That Number.
I don't think so. I think it was a separate day.
Yeah.
Day's work.
Do you remember what you used? Because I think
I used a Les Paul on that.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to get a little more grind.
Yeah.
And the VT22 loves that humbucking pickup. And I just wanted it to growl.
Yeah, well, definitely. In that solo, like you can hear that Altec that you mentioned, that's an Alnico speaker, right? It's not ceramic. The magnets, speakers? Yeah, the magnets on I think those Altecs were
I'm not sure.
because there's this
they weigh a ton.
Yeah. Well, I guess they could be anything, but I remember like the sound when I hear the overdriven kind of sound of it, it has sort of the breakup to me that a ceramic speaker has. But maybe I could be totally wrong. I'm sure that the internet will correct me if I'm off on what it is. But I've got it rigged up here for us to listen to in a second. But do you remember, like, was that also a composed solo, or was that something that was kind of just improvised in the moment?
That was improvised. I just closed my eyes and went for it.
And do you think that was just like one take, and then that was
It was a couple of takes, but we had a thing in Steely Dan we used to call it "Gotta Have It," and sometimes Walter or Donald or Gary would, "You want to keep going?" And I'd go, "No, that's it."
Yeah.
I mean, we can go through this exercise, but I'm telling you, that's it. And a couple of times I said, "Fine, let's just keep going." And then we come back, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of knew when you had the right take for this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And was most of this already like, were they typically giving you charts for kind of like the structure of the song, or was it the band would just come together and you would kind of just develop?
Well, we learned everything. Everything was well rehearsed before we went in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for that song in particular, they kind of told you like, okay, this is what we want you to do. Like,
here's what we want solos in.
Yeah.
And then it was
in like the line that like the da da.
Well, that line was not to say written, but that was, they composed that line.
Okay.
That was one of the themes of the song.
Yeah.
So sure, I made sure that I had that in my head.
Would he like just play like on a Rhodes or a piano and say, okay, this is the line I'm thinking about, and then you would just like transfer that to the guitar?
Well, we all, as we rehearsed the songs, everybody knew everything, all the pieces of the song.
Right.
That solo was an overdub.
Yeah. Okay. Man, it's one of my favorite guitar tones. Like, it's one that I search for.
Folks have told me that, and I thought, wow, so I had to go back and listen to
it. And was it just like a 70s Les Paul that would have been contemporary at that time, or was it?
It was a Les Paul I'd done a lot of work on.
Okay.
And actually the same kind of Les Paul that I had customized for Dean Parks.
Okay.
As well.
Was it a custom or just like a Les Paul standard, or do you have much recollection?
Nice sunburst.
Yeah.
2 humbucking pickups. But I had added a potentiometer in between the 2 coils.
Okay.
Because there's a way to still get some of the humbucking capability from it.
Mm-hmm.
But also to get a little more top end.
Okay. So it was almost like adding in like a treble bleed circuit into the humbucker or something like that?
Well, the way a humbucker is wired up is, it's 2 coils in series.
Yep.
The idea being that if they're perfectly in phase, anything, any extra radio frequencies, RF comes in, is canceled out. So if you put a potentiometer in and you vary the phasing between the coils, mm-hmm. meaning you vary the amount of output from one coil as opposed to the other in the circuit. Yeah. It obviously adds top end because single coil pickups are naturally, brighter than humbuckers.
Right. So you were able to break in between the 2 coils and add like another, mm-hmm. you were able to add another lead so that you were able to basically take
I did that to everything.
Okay.
I can never leave them alone.
Yeah, well, and now
except for my Burns Baby Bison Jr.
Okay,
I left that alone.
All right, well, let's have a listen to it, and let's hear some of this amazing guitar tone.
Everywhere around me if it's right. But until my ship comes in, I live night by night. Well, I don't really care.
We will get right back to the interview, but before we do, I want to talk to you about buffers. Now, if you don't know, I am not just somebody who interviews these great musicians, but I actually make my living as a guitar pedal manufacturer. And one of the pedals that I'm extremely passionate about is called a buffer. And basically what it does is it ensures that even though you have all these different effects and pedals to get your signature sound, that you're not compromising the core element of just what the guitar and amp would be producing on their own. It ensures that even though you're running through all these different devices with long cables, that you're going to get the exact same sound as your guitar would be if it were plugged directly into the amplifier, despite running through all these different effects. I recommend that you check out our product called the Vertex Buffer Interface. And we have two different versions that are identical circuits. One that's designed to mount into our Vertex pedal board systems, and another one that's just a standalone interface version that you can put on literally any pedal board that is out there with whatever type of Velcro or fastener that you want. Please do check them out over on our website, vertexeffects.com. I'll also link various dealers of this product, including our friends over at Sweetwater. Now back to the interview. Oh, man. Does that bring back any memories?
Pardon?
Does that bring back any memories?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, everything about even when you're walking, up from like, I don't really care if it's wrong or if it's right. Like, I mean, that's just like an incredible overdriven guitar tone. It's like one of the best, and it's just so good. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the compliment.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that I'm not the first person that said it, as you said, but yeah, to me, it's just one of the Mount Rushmores of like just great Les Paul tone.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So another one that I want to talk to you, last one on this particular record, is the East St. Louis Toodle-oo. And it sounds like, in the composition, everybody kind of gets to play their kind of, interpretation of a different section of the song.
Right.
And in this one, you're playing, is it pedal steel or lap steel?
Pedal
Pedal steel, yeah. And do you remember much about this particular song on this?
Sure. We were all of us were Duke Ellington fans.
Yeah.
Anyway, Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn, who wrote a lot of the material for the Duke. And I'm not sure whether it was Walter O'Donnell that came up with the idea, but as soon as they mentioned it, I said, yes, this is an academic exercise that'll be good for all of us.
Yeah.
And so I wrote out the trombone solo and then learned to play it on pedal steel, because I thought the trombone is an instrument that, you can slide notes. I figured, well, why not?
Yeah.
Pedal steel's the perfect instrument for that.
Yeah.
And I liked the challenge. And it was a challenge.
Yeah.
But I had a ball doing it.
Yeah.
And after it was over and listened to it in the song, it was one of those things where you listen back and you're actually happy.
Yeah.
I was really happy with that.
Yeah, how it turned out. Was it like a thing that as far as like just having to practice it for like a multiple hours, like leading up to it to kind of get?
I did practice it. Yeah, I was supposed to say I wrote it out.
Yeah.
Because I figured that's what we were doing. It was like any other arrangement. The Duke, everything was written.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, fine. I'm gonna do this the old way.
Yeah.
Not the old way is probably the wrong. Not old. The standard way.
Yeah.
And write it out and learn it.
Yeah. And was it, do you remember what you were using back then for your pedal steel?
I was using an Emmons D10.
Okay. And any volume pedals, Goodrich or any of that stuff for any like the
I had a, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was a a
Or
volume
Showbud?
pedal that used it was optical.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it probably then wasn't a Showbud then.
No.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know if Hilton was around
No.
then. Yeah. I think
I didn't start playing Showbud until about 4 years after that.
Okay. And do you remember what amp you used?
I think it was direct.
Yeah, it was direct. Wow. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit of it with you. I've cut it down to kind of just your section so we can kind of hear that
Okay.
and focus on it. Let's have a listen to it.
By the way, I love these headphones.
Yeah, the
I'm
Audio
a big
Technica.
fan of Audio Technica.
Yeah. Very.
So Roz, I really like these. When I think back, there were a couple of parts where I said, okay, I'll do it in octaves.
Uh-huh.
And then harmonics. I love harmonics on pedal steel.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd grab a little section there and kind of run the gamut of the things that you can do on the instrument to give it a little bit more flavor than the original solo.
Yeah, no, it's a really beautiful interpretation, and I'm really glad, when we were discussing in sort of the pre-interview stage that you suggested it, because I had kind of not considered, again, this is sort of like the diversity of what you brought to the table as a session player. You could, there's only like you and Dean Parks are really the only two guys that I know that are like super competent on the guitar and then can also do great stuff with a pedal steel.
Yeah, Dean he took up the pedal steel probably, I don't know, it's got to be 10 or 15 years ago. And he's doing great.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've been spending some time with Slash.
Yeah.
And he's taken up pedal steel.
All right.
So we've been spending some time together. And this is an instrument that doesn't come easy in a sense that you have to shed a lot.
Yeah.
And Slash is putting the time in, and he's playing good.
Awesome.
And Dean plays great. I mean,
well, I look forward to hearing Slash playing it because
that'd
be really.
I think he's playing it actually in some of his live shows.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Good for him.
Yeah. Wow. Great. I want to move to another record of Steely Dan's, Countdown to Ecstasy. So a little bit before Pretzel Logic, maybe by about a year or so. And I wanted to start with my old school. I have the Midnight Special live version on repeat all the time on YouTube, and I love watching it perform live and your amazing guitar solo on that. And also, we should mention that you have a record that you've recently released, which you've also done your interpretation of My Old School on. And I'd love to hear about that session and some of the equipment, and then maybe we can contrast that with your interpretation and kind of how you've reapproached it now many years later.
I guess that version of the Midnight Special, they're starting to release those things.
Yeah.
I got a nice email from Tony Blinken, Secretary of State. And Tony said, this is awesome.
Yeah.
He's a friend. We actually have a band together.
And he plays left-handed.
Yes. Yes, he does. Nice Dan electro. Great. And I used to sing the song live.
Yeah.
For some reason, they wanted me to do it. And as we began to perform it, it got more and more energy. The version on the Midnight Special is much more energetic than the recorded version.
Yeah.
Not that I have a problem with the recorded version.
Yeah.
But the more I would play it live, I always thought someday there's got to be a time where I can inject the amount of energy into this track that it really deserves.
Yeah.
And so when I did the solo project, I thought I'm gonna make it thermonuclear. I'm gonna do it for everything it has. And so I think we attained a pretty high energy level in that version. And being a frustrated saxophone player, not that I ever played saxophone, but when the days when you started out, when I was a kid, most of the really good instructional books were trumpet and saxophone. I mean, guitar was only beginning, first of all, to be a lead instrument. It was a rhythm instrument until it was electrified for years in the orchestra. And so people were trying to figure out, okay, where are you going to go? You know, where's your legacy to build on to become, you know, a facile melody lead guitar player? And it was really saxophone and trumpet. So my old school was, to me, in my head, I was playing saxophone. That's how I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
I was in my mind. I was, you know, Junior Walker. I was there doing it. And that was 1 or 2 takes.
Wow.
And that was a gotta have it. There were a couple of things in there that they wanted to change. I said, no.
Yeah.
No, I think I got it.
Wow. And do you remember on the original recording what you used for that sound? Was
that Stratocaster that literally I had finished routing it out in the parking lot. You know, I taped it down and routed it out. I'd already put the electronics into a pickguard, dropped it in, soldered it to the input jack, took it down to the studio, and played my old school.
Wow. And do you remember back then, I presume you set up all your own guitars at that point since you were already you know, technically inclined. Were you a high action guy, a low action guy? What was your kind of preference when you would...
Well, it depended on the instrument. Some instruments do better with higher action. For instance, if you're using an archtop guitar to play a rhythm part, you want the action a little higher because you want it to be a little louder.
Yeah.
The lower the action, for some reason, it seems that the less output the instrument itself has, not the electronic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I fretted all my own guitars. I did everything. You know?
Yeah. Did you find that, like, on a vintage Fender where it had a more curved radius, you also had to increase the action just so you had the ability to bend through those notes and stuff like that?
I never really thought about that. To me, you approached setting up each instrument as it was.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're pulling a Ford 351 Cleveland out of a Mustang, that's what you're starting with.
Yeah.
You're starting with the 351 engine block.
Yeah.
Then, so it was the same thing with a guitar. Yeah. You start with what you have. But I have never had a problem with any guitar that anybody's given me.
Okay.
And now, when I was at Dan Armstrong's shop, we did have a sign over the bench that said, "We do not repair Japanese guitars or Rickenbacker guitars." And Rickenbacker guitars at the time were notoriously unstable. And at the time, this was back in the early 60s, Japanese guitars weren't all that great. They were low-end guitars, Zimgar, Taisco Del Rey, St. George. Even Ibanez was making low-end guitars. Then, of course, Fernandez, and all of a sudden the Japanese started making unbelievably high-quality instruments. But no, I because I repaired and customized so many guitars, I don't know, I guess I felt more like a surgeon. Here's the body.
Right.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
I got to work with what I got.
Yeah. Yeah. I dig that. And do you remember about what kind of amp you were using for that sound?
That was the VT22.
Man, the VT was the MVP, man, for all these.
You bet. It's a great amplifier.
Yeah.
It was a great pedal steel amp, too, when we did live. It just... Dan Armstrong had a lot to do with designing the original amplifier with Ampeg.
Okay.
And again, Danny's shop was one of these places where every guitar player in the world would come into that place. Because really it was the only place where we could customize, where you could get your guitar, especially electronics, somebody we knew enough to be able to do whatever you wanted. I mean, somebody would bring in a Guild, bass, or a Gibson EBO bass, too much bottom.
Yeah.
Fine. Take the pickup, throw it in the trash, take a DeArmond gold foil pickup, use plumbing seal, stick it on the bottom of the pickup thing, put it back in the guitar, and go, holy crap, that sounds great. Good.
Yeah.
We'll do whatever you want.
Wow.
You know, it's just we spend a lot of time experimenting.
Where was Dan Armstrong's place located?
Originally, it was on 48th Street.
Okay.
In New York, up on the 6th floor.
Okay.
Bill Burko amps on that side, Dan Armstrong guitars on the other side of the 6th floor.
Wow. So they were basically kind of like doing what Valley Arts was doing in LA later on in the 70s and 80s in terms of like
which we were doing in the 60s.
Yeah. Did you ever get into using any of the Dan Armstrong modules like the Orange Squeezer or any of the others?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To this day, I carry an Orange Squeezer.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, again, Danny had done his homework. It's one sound. It's the perfect sound.
Yeah.
So I've used it on a number of things. I've used it on pedal steel as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, by contrast, when you did your own version, obviously much higher gain, much more distortion, what were you using on your record to kind of encapsulate the sound that you kind of heard in your head for that?
Much of that record I did with a Roland ME10.
Okay.
Which was a multi-effects pedal that I had. That was one of my projects with Roland. Okay. I've been with Roland for 50 years now. Yeah. So there's a number of things that I've had the joy to work on, and that was one of them.
Yeah.
And when we designed it, I had not insisted, but I had strongly suggested that the front end of it be analog.
Yeah.
Because analog distortion, I've just never heard good digital distortion.
Yeah.
Never heard it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly, you know, if you listen to the record, I mean, and we'll get to hear a little bit of it here. I mean, it's a really great, you know, like overdriven, distorted tone. The lead sound is really beautiful and has like, you know, this perfect kind of body and kind of roundness to it. I'd love to have people have a listen to it. I'd like to, maybe we'll play first the original and then we'll immediately transition into a clip of your version. All right, let's have a listen.
the 35 sweet goodbyes. When you put me on the Wolverine up to Annandale. It was still September when your daddy was quite surprised to find you with the working girls in the county jail. I was smoking with the boys upstairs when I heard about the whole affair. I said, oh no, William and Mary won't do now. Well, I did not think the girl could be so cruel.
We will get right back to the interview. But before we do, I want to tell you about something special that we've created for people just like you who enjoy this type of content, long-form interviews with session musicians and artists who have made amazing songs throughout their career and want to know more about their stories, their backstories, and hear them play some of the amazing hits that we all know and love. We've created a community on a platform called School. We offer not only master classes as it relates to pedal boards and pedals and understanding signal path and the order of effects, whether you're a guitar player or a bass player, but you also get access to many of these artists that we're interviewing, and we're going to give School community members access to live Q&As with these artists that are happening during the course of the interview that will then become part of the actual interview as we're sort of debriefing at the end of each video with that artist. It's a great opportunity to get involved. It's a great opportunity to have access to these artists, and it's a great opportunity to be part of our community. I welcome you to join. All the information about the platform is listed below. You can join for absolutely $0, absolutely free, and you can decide whether you want to engage, buy maybe some of our master classes or maybe some of our other offerings on the School platform, should you desire. But we just want you to be part of the conversation. So please join us over there. Now back to the interview.
Oh, yeah, should have let that go. That was David Page playing organ.
That was David
Killed
Page.
it. When I said I was doing the record, David said, I'm playing organ on it. But, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, you're not going to let me, I'm doing it. Absolutely. My pleasure,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love your version. Sounds great. And that's you singing on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds great.
I sang on the demo and I sent it to Steve Tyler. And because I wanted him to, I just did a scratch vocal.
Yeah.
He said, who's singing it? I said, well, it's me, but ignore that.
Mm-hmm.
They said, well, why don't you sing it? I said, because I'm not a singer. That's not what I do.
Yeah.
I play guitar. And he goes, well, I'm telling you. Are you shitting me? And he said, no. No, so I trust him. He's a friend. I took his word for it.
Yeah, I love it. It's really incredible. And again, I love the respect that it pays to the original, but I love to see, your personality even shine through on it. It's really beautiful.
Well, I just think the song has so much potential.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it really is a rockin' tune.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people are interested in checking it out or purchasing it, should they go to your website? Should they check it out on the streaming services? Where do you...
Streaming services, Apple Music, Spotify, all that stuff.
We'll have it all linked in the description of the video so that people are able to find it easily. I also want to talk to you about another song on the same record, The Countdown to Ecstasy, which is Bodhisattva, which has got, again, one of my, all-time favorite solos that you've played. And again, just like amazing guitar tone. Do you remember much about that session or what you used?
Yeah, and this was an opportunity for Denny to really shine.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I love his guitar playing. Very structured player, but without being boring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was imaginative. He was a good New York, from the school of Eddie Deal and Sam Brown and Dan Armstrong and Al Caiola and all those guys that were great players. So the first solo section was Denny playing the crap out of it. Mm-hmm. Then they wanted it to get a little more thermonuclear at the end. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, well, I think I can do that.
Yeah.
And the out was just as nuts as I could make it.
Yeah. Do you remember what you used to get those sounds?
I used that sort of hybrid Telecaster that you mentioned.
Okay.
The one with the Skunk'S pickups on it.
Oh, okay. That was the one that was in the Midnight Special.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about for amp?
I am not sure what I used on that. It may have been a Fender Bandmaster.
Okay.
But the original one with the 310s.
Okay, so the tweed ones from the 50s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a great sound.
Because that thing just, threw up on itself when you cranked it up. It was great.
Yeah, they're kind of unique amps, even impedance-wise, because you don't often get 3 8-ohm speakers. And
yeah. You're running at 6 ohms in 4.2 ohms. It's very strange.
Yeah, but it has a sound just like a Super Reverb kind of has an interesting sound with 410s.
A little better because the Super Reverb is 4 16-ohm speakers wired series parallel. Whereas the bandmaster had 3, they had to figure out a way how to get that and still match the right output for the transformer. And 4 ohms, the closer you can get to direct current on an amplifier without it becoming electrocuted, the better the amp sounds.
And did you used to work on these amps that you'd be using in the studio? You used to kind of
a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, I had Paul Rivera, who was a good friend of mine.
Yeah. And was he at Valley Arts by that time, or was he on his own?
No, he was doing this stuff on his own.
Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't even building guitar amps yet.
Wow. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit of it, and
sure.
Let's see what we got. We will get right back to the interview, but before we do, I want to tell you about something that I do as my day job. Now, as much as I would love to be a professional journalist and interviewer of some of these amazing session musicians and artists, the fact is I manufacture guitar pedals and amplifiers. And one of our amplifiers is absolutely amazing, and I think you'd really want to know about it. It's based on the Dumble Steel String Singer, which is a very famous amp that guys like John Mayer, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and Eric Johnson use as a clean pedal platform to use all sorts of effects to stack in front of it in order to get their signature tone. Now, these are really big and heavy and expensive amplifiers if you can find one, and I've managed to make one that's half the size, 50 watts, very portable and lightweight, and will allow you to impart that great sound of the Dumble style tone into your rig with whatever pedals of your choosing. And it sounds so good, I want to show you a little clip of it here of me playing it with a Strat and just using the amp on its own for all the sounds, a little bit of reverb coming from the amp, all tube, all hand wired, all made in the United States. I hope you dig it. So good.
Yeah, I was huffing and puffing at the end of that one.
Yeah.
As fast as
So that first section that we played, that was
That was
Denny,
Denny.
and then it transitioned when it kind of got a little
Yeah.
gainier and more. Okay, got it. Yeah, it's so cool how that it just continues to develop and just get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's a really, really cool structure to that song. I really love that. Well, the last song from Steely Dan that I want to talk to you about, Skunk, is again a song you hit me to. I had no idea about Dallas, and it was recorded with "Can't Buy a Thrill." Is that correct? In my understanding,
it was at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was just something that they decided wasn't going to make that album, or do you have much of a sense of kind of what happened to it?
I think that I think it was Donald that was afraid that with the name Steely Dan and the fact that in a lot of ways it had a lot of country flavor to it, that people would mistake the band as a country band. I, for one, thought I didn't think that would happen.
Yeah.
Because the song is very unique. And Jimmy Hodder, who sang it, I mean, the drummer, I mean, what a voice. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, somebody must have liked it because Poco, as soon as they heard it, immediately covered it. A number of other bands covered it.
Who sang it in Poco? Was it? It wasn't Timothy B. Schmidt, was it?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay. I'll have to check that one out.
But they did a great job.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you remember, what you were using for that song as far as the gear?
Yep. I was using a pull string telly.
Okay.
Which is my way of getting around not having pedal steel with me all the time.
Okay.
And it was a body that someone had built for me. It looked like a cutting board. Maple, walnut,
Okay.
walnut. And I again did the electronics, and the guitar pedal steel was a Emmons D10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, it's really cool. I mean, I was really, like it's a great song, and it's surprising that it seemed like it only released on like a Japanese version of "Can't Buy a Thrill" or something like that. It's like kind of like just an added bonus song or something like that.
Well, it's too bad because it's an orphan.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because I love the song.
Yeah.
And the hook is really compelling. It's the right time, the right feel, and the right groove.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll go listen to Poco's version.
Yeah, I will. And let's listen to this one. Let's listen to Dallas as it was originally intended. We'll hear a little bit of it.
I lived in no holy house but the Grand Hotel. The back streets of this old town I know so well. And not drunk in no holy wine save muscatel. But now my friend, I got to go. You tell everyone I know I'm saying goodbye, bye, bye, Dallas. I can't stay, should have been at the palace. Missed the day, bye, bye, Dallas. Got to go. And I remember when they told me so.
Dang, that was such a great solo.
Well, and also the song, to me, that reminds me of where Steely Dan went on Countdown to Ecstasy. Like Razor Boy, it had that kind of vibe way before we'd gotten there, frankly.
Yeah. So you felt like this was kind of the precursor to
I thought
yeah,
so,
yeah,
but hey,
yeah,
it's really, that's one of the things I wish I could have had a gotta have it, because I would have loved to see that record out. But hey,
yeah. Well, it's great. Hopefully this will get some more eyes on it, and we'll see if that can give it some traction. I think it's interesting that they kind of felt like it was too country, because there was people that were sort of, at that time, bands were kind of dabbling in that stylistic choice,
Yeah.
but like the Eagles, but became still pop rock and roll at the end of the day, even though they had some influence.
well,
in that space.
there was Hillman's band, all those guys. Those bands were doing very well.
Yeah.
And started with the Byrds, the Buffalo Springfield, and then all the different genetic
Yeah.
um, uh, variations of that. So yeah, that was already a genre of music.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, really interesting that, that was just not something that they chose, but I'm glad that we at least get an opportunity to highlight it
Oh, I'm
here.
glad you liked it.
Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I want to now move to something totally different that I think really looks at sort of the diversity of what you brought to the table as a session musician. I think in the case of Steely Dan, you were like, a band member in that case.
Yeah.
And then, as it progressed into the mid 70s and 80s, you were, first call guy. And three songs I wanted to highlight is one by Dolly Parton, 9 to 5, which is a huge hit for her. Donna Summer, Hot Stuff. And then also you did some work with Joni Mitchell in arguably one of her best all-star bands of all time. And so I would like to start first, if we could, with 9 to 5, Dolly Parton.
Okay.
Was that done in Nashville? Where was
No.
that? That was done out
He
here?
was out here in L.A.
Really?
I just got the call, showed up, brought my jazz master with me.
Uh-huh.
By the way, my original 61 jazz master with me. It was interesting. I was playing in and out of the house band in the Palomino Club. I was on the road with Johnny Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was playing country music.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, this was an easy one.
Yeah.
But when I heard the song, I thought, if they're going to they didn't tell me what to play. They called me because they wanted,
Yeah.
I think it was like the Donna Summer thing. They wanted something, a little different perspective.
Yeah.
So I thought I would give it some bounce, which I thought eventually really kind of helped the song out.
Yeah.
Because it has a syncopation to it.
Yeah.
That is, you don't really hear in country music.
Yeah. No, it definitely swings like a lot.
Yeah, well, that's me.
Yeah.
I like to do that.
Yeah.
Can't help myself.
Yeah, well, I think it's totally appropriate for what it was. And was it just like classic kind of like jazz master into a Fender, or did you?
Yeah, through a deluxe reverb.
Okay. Was this one of the Rivera modern ones, or just one that happened to be at the studio? Or
I'm not sure. I think it was something that I had delivered, because we all had cartage companies delivering amps.
Okay. Back at that time, this would have been like probably a little earlier than, I think it was 1980 that it came out, but probably recorded before then.
I think it was 79 we recorded it.
What cartage company did you used to use back then? I guess Andy Brower might have maybe just been coming on the scene.
God, this is terrible that I don't remember it.
It's okay.
But everybody, I had 4 different setups, because we were jumping from studio to studio.
Yeah.
And they had to have everything set up so we could run in, do it, and run out. So I'm not sure which deluxe reverb that was.
Yeah. And do you remember Dolly being there, or was it just like, she was there?
Yep.
And did she say like, "Skunk, I want it like this," or was this?
Nope. She just sat there and listened. Very sweet lady. God, she was so kind. She was baking cookies and
really.
Oh, this woman is an angel.
Wow.
But when they ran the track, I asked the producer. I said, "Is there anything special you want me? Because there's really all of this chords here."
Yeah.
And he said, "Just, I want you to do what Skunk does."
Yeah.
She said, "Okay, well, I will do that."
Well, as I've said to many session greats like you, is you guys are such uncredited arrangers. Like some of these things make such a difference as to whether, you know, again, the song has a feel to it, the bounce, just the movement of the song. It's so instrumental to how it's perceived by the public. But, you know, you get person A in there or person B in there, and it could be a totally different outcome, you know, as far as how it ends up being, you know, landing for the average listener. So I think they're glad they chose you. This thing is
Well, it was
a huge hit.
And then when I listen to it, you know, it has a lot of fatback feel to it, an R&B, and
Yeah.
I think that any good flavor of R&B, if it's done tastefully, can only be positive for any record.
Yeah.
It's just because it's in people's DNA.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind
of like the Meters meet Dolly Parton, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I can definitely hear that there's that influence, and yeah, you're fantastic at doing that. I think when I hear sort of the comping style on that, it's amazing. Not that many people can do it. It's like you. I think Steve Cropper's another guy who's really good at doing that. And kind of mixing
James
Burton lead lines with rhythm parts and stuff like that, and kind of fitting
Sure.
it. And yeah, I'd love to listen to it and just kind of hear a little clip of it and see if it jogs your memory on any other cool stories about the session.
Tumble out of bed and I stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition and yawn and stretch and try to come to life. Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Out on the streets the traffic starts jumping with folks like me on the job from 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. Barely getting by, it's all taking and no giving. They just use your mind and they never give you credit. It's enough to drive you crazy if you let it. 9 to 5 for service and devotion. You would think that I would deserve a fair promotion. Want to move ahead, but the boss won't seem to let me. I swear sometimes that man is out to get me. They let you dream just to watch him shatter. You're just a step on the boss man's ladder, but you got dreams he'll never take away. In the same boat with a lot of your friends, waiting for the day your ship will come in and the tide's gonna turn and it's all gonna roll your way.
Man, the perfect use of triads, you know, just like getting in those beautiful little.
And I usually own squeezer on that.
Oh man, yeah,
compress the crap out of it. Yeah,
it was great. I love
Made
it.
the engineer happy.
Yeah,
Needle just stayed there, didn't move.
Yep,
didn't have to worry about me.
Yeah, and the and that was it was a simple compressor, right? It was just, you know, there were no knobs on that orange squeezer.
No, it was the right sound.
Yeah. It was just a 1/4-inch jack and the truth. That's all you
That's it.
all you had.
That's it.
Well, I'd love to move to your work with Donna Summer on the song Hot Stuff. There's 2 guitar credits. There's you and Paul Jackson Jr.
Mhm.
And I think you're credited on the solo. I don't know if you did any other fills.
Yeah, some of the rhythm parts.
Yeah, because some of it sounds a little heavier than what we would ordinarily associate Paul Jackson for. And it is first of all, probably one of the biggest disco hits of its generation. And of course, Donna Summer was a prolific, you know, in that genre in particular. And apparently a really sweet lady from all reports.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you remember much about the Hot Stuff session? Or
Yeah, it was. It almost didn't happen.
Really?
My assistant forgot to call him to tell me that Giorgio had called, and then
that's right, it's Giorgio Moroder.
Giorgio Moroder,
Yeah.
and so I saw it on a message pad. I said, "Who's this?" She said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. This guy, Giorgio Moroder, called. He wants you for a session." So I called him back. I said, "What kind of music is it?" He said, "It's disco."
Yeah.
I went, "Okay," because myself and Jay Graydon and a bunch of us had been doing a lot of disco records.
Yep.
I mean, it was getting to the point, not to be snotty about it, but Jay and I would get together on a Monday and decide what riff we're going to play for the whole week. To us, it was all the same. And so I said, "Call Jay." And so he called Jay and said, nah, call Skunk. So I said, okay, I'll do the session. But I mean, there's a million guitar players that can do this.
Uh-huh.
If you want something different, then I'm happy to do it. But I'd like to have some space.
Yeah.
I hadn't even heard it.
Yeah.
And he said, play whatever you want. Because I think what he was trying to do, and what he did, you can see from the results, he wanted to move Donna into more of a rock vein.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I grabbed I was moving house. Carter's company was, for some reason, they were having some trouble. I remember he was digging up the road or something. Basically, I didn't have a guitar. Mm-hmm. So I went down to Guitar Center. Paul Herman was the manager down the one in Hollywood. I said, Paul, I need a guitar now. He said, so he laughed. He said, pointed to a box in the middle of the store and had a box that buy me $25. Had a bunch of weird guitars in it. It had a Burns Baby Bison with 5 regular tuning pegs and somebody put a Gibson tuning peg on it. And so I picked it up, plugged it in, played it. Okay, fine. I gave him $35. Bought a 6-pack of Bud, went down to Rusk Studios, and they played me the song. I said, fine. There was a deluxe reverb already there. Turned everything up to 10, plugged the guitar in, and said, roll tape. And that was it. It was one take.
Wow.
And on the Bad Girls record,
yeah,
is the first time anybody used a guitar synthesizer on a record. And the solo on that is guitar synth.
Really?
Yeah. The Roland, it was a prototype.
Wow.
We were working on, yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, that Burns Bison Jr., Baby Bison, sounds great.
Yeah.
It's James Burns was a great guitar designer. And working with those guys was so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah. Do you have any idea, like, on any of these, that they were going to be kind of the hits that they became when you were working on them? Or did you kind of it was just kind of another song? Or how did you kind of think about these in those terms?
I don't think I had any, foresight about what it was going to be. After it was over, I thought, wow, this is different.
Yeah.
And I said to Giorgio, I think I know what you wanted to do. Yeah. Is this what you wanted to do? And he said, absolutely.
Wow.
This is exactly where I wanted this to go. And he was a very successful producer. So absolutely. I thought, okay, well, all we can do is sew the body back up and see what happens,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was huge with her. He was big with Blondie and tons of others. But I would love to listen to a little bit of this solo and give the people what they want. They get to hear a little beautiful Skunk Baxter lead tone. Oh god. I love how you take it outside for just that split second, just challenging the people on the in the disco scene just for a second, and then just bringing it back with this perfect resolution.
Well, again, I thought and my attitude has always been the same, kind of like when we talked about with Rikki. Don't lose that number. Let's find a little spot that we can
Yeah.
get people's attention and do something sideways.
Yeah, well, it's an absolutely iconic song. I mean, Hot Stuff is so iconic as far as disco.
That's a great sounding guitar.
Yeah,
I mean, if you listen to the rhythm parts,
yeah, because you're playing
that thing cuts. Yeah, that thing cuts through. I ended up using a guitar a lot.
Yeah. Do you still have that guitar?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, just in case.
Hey, I play it. You know, there's things that only it will do.
Does it still have the one Gibson tuner on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just as it was from Guitar Center.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, I never took the other. I never replaced the tuning peg or anything. No.
So it was as perfect as is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the last song amongst sort of some of these female artists that you work with, again, just a small array of the many that you worked with Joni Mitchell in the song "In France They Kiss on Main Street," and I think you're credited on it, and Robin Ford is credited on it. Do you remember much about that record or working with Joni Mitchell? I
do, because I've been doing a lot of work for A&M. For some reason, all of a sudden, Hoyt Axton and Joni Mitchell, and all of a sudden I was going down there to the corner of La Brea or Highland or wherever it was down there, and Hollywood Boulevard, and been doing a bunch of sessions. So this particular, first of all, I had a tremendous respect for her. She, and to this day, I mean, that performance that she did not that long ago was spectacular. So moving. Just shows that you can't, no matter what happens, if people really have their shit together, it stays together until the day they pass on.
Yeah.
But it was the fun. Again, it was all the cats. You walk in the studio, you know everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And she was very involved. She was very hands-on.
Yeah. Because
she was very talented, had a good understanding of what she wanted.
Uh-huh.
And it went very well. And we had actually, after that session, we become friends, or every once in a while we go out to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
So I called her up and said, I'm going to be in Westwood. I know your favorite place over there. Yeah, let's go have a bite to eat. I said, can I bring my godson with me? She said, sure. It's Slim Jim Phantom from the Stray Cats. His son, TJ, is my godson. He's 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought him with me to lunch, and we had a great lunch. And afterwards, I said, so TJ, what'd you think? And it's amazing how kids can sum things up correctly. She said, she's huge, beautiful.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's what a 9-year-old would say. But what else is there to say? She is huge, beautiful in everything that she does.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that's really cool. And was she like, so you feel like that just the essence of Joni Mitchell, it transcended that. Even in 1974, it was the same vibe even then.
Yeah, that woman, whatever the engine that drives her,
yeah,
is running just fine.
Awesome. Awesome. And with guys like Robin Ford, when you're in a session where it's the two of you, are you guys sort of talking about, who's going to take what part, or was it just kind of like a natural?
Sometimes it's written, and you play what they have written for you. And I think Robin and I discussed that though, about what would make the most sense, mostly sonically.
Yeah.
How we were going to make sure that we didn't sonically get in each other's way.
Yeah.
And be able to execute what they wanted.
Yeah. And then there's also like an acoustic on there. Was she playing that, or was one of you guys?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't remember that.
Okay. Well, let's have a listen to it and see if you can remember. There's some parts that sound a lot like something Robin Ford would do, just because he has like this certain like a stylistic approach that's like very consistent amongst them, and then there's other ones where it's hard to tell who it is. So maybe you can clarify it for us.
Downtown, my darling dime store thief. In the War of Independence, rock and roll rang sweet as victory. Under neon signs, a girl was in bloom, and a woman was fading in a suburban room. I said, take me to the dance. Do you want to dance? I love to dance. And I told him, they don't take chances. They seem so removed from romance. They've been broken in churches and schools and molded to middle class circumstance. And we were rolling, rolling, rock and rolling.
Yeah, I think that was Robin,
Yeah,
the
it was
last out, but I recognize the intro licks.
Yeah, because there's definitely like there's definitely, so it sounds like there's like an arpeggio thing that's happening, and then it sounds like there's these little kind of like rhythm stabs that are coming in there. And do you remember what you used on that record? Because you're on a bunch of songs on that record. Do you remember? I think you were at least on 2 or 3 songs on there. Do you remember what you used?
I think I was using a Strat that was made out of mahogany.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, Red Rose and I had a guitar shop down on Coinga Boulevard.
Okay.
And he was making these velvet hammer pickups.
Uh-huh.
So I had put a set of those in there. I think that's what that was.
I think Paul Revere also worked with Red Roads for a while.
Pardon?
Paul Revere also worked with Red, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I've known Paul since, like I said, since I got to LA in 1970.
Yeah, and he was in New York before that. And
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, he and I have also subsequently become friends. And so
yeah, he's an amazing guy.
He is. He's a genius, and he makes incredible amps. Still does to this day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so in awe. Like again, this the diversity of having Steely Dan, Joni Mitchell, Donna Summer, Dolly Parton. I want to now move to your work with the Doobie Brothers, and you have played on a lot of their records, a lot of the big hit songs, and we're a band member of the Doobie Brothers. And so sort of similarly to how you were a band member of Steely Dan, you weren't just doing sessions with them. You were like you were the guy. And I was wondering how you got involved with the Doobie Brothers. How did that all come about? You're on some records that pre-exist Michael McDonald, and some that are all kind of when Michael McDonald's kind of the primary vocalist, at least in the group. How did this relationship come to be?
Well, Steely Dan was opening shows for the Doobie Brothers.
Okay.
And I don't know, it kind of just morphed. I remember the guys in the Doobie saying, well, would you like to sit in? I said, sure. I pick a couple of songs, and then it was 5 songs, then it was 10 songs. And then I started playing most of the show. So when Walter Becker and Donald Fagen decided they didn't want to tour anymore, I was already out with the Doobie Brothers. We were doing the Nebworth Festival in England. And I hung up the phone and said, well, that's kind of it for me because I like playing live. And they said, well, you're in the Doobie Brothers now. Okay. All right, great.
And is this during sort of like...
But I'd done sessions for them.
Okay.
In before that.
So like Stampede, for example, like...
No, I was actually playing in the band at the time.
You were in the band at
But Once for Once Vices and those playing steel and playing acoustic and playing, doing session work.
Okay. And then you were in the band then when they were kind of getting Michael McDonald involved with the Doobie Brothers. Do you remember anything about like how it was decided that he would come in? Because before it was primarily Tom Johnston, right, that was playing or that was singing the majority of the load
Yeah.
mixed with Pat.
Yeah, it's a hard one to forget. We were playing at Louisiana State University, big, 50,000 people, huge amphitheater thing. And Tom had gotten sick. He'd already had some stomach problems, and he just couldn't get out of the dressing room.
Yeah.
It really hit him hard.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, somebody's got to make a command decision.
Yeah.
Quick. So I went out on stage and said, here's the deal. We'll give you your money back if you want, or if you wait 10 days, we'll come and do a show. And nobody wanted their money back. So I picked up the phone, called Michael, said, there's a one-way ticket waiting for you. Get your ass out here. I'm going to rehearse for a week.
Yeah.
And you're going to be at least until it changes, you're going to be in the Doobie Brothers.
Yeah.
And it worked out very well.
Yeah.
We had 6 encores from that show, and it kind of cemented, I think, the movement into something else. I mean, there are other bands that did it. Fleetwood Mac certainly did it. I mean, there were bands that took the core musicianship of the band and it morphed and developed into something. The good thing about the Doobie Brothers was the depth of musicianship in that band was really, really deep, more than they knew. Because when we started to do the Living on the Fault Line album, which is an amazing record, actually.
Absolutely.
I talked to the producer, I talked to Ted, and I said, I got an idea. How about I book sessions for the band as a rhythm section. Show up at 9, play it right, or you're fired.
Yeah.
Because I still had kind of the Steely Dan, that was my way of looking at things. And he said, sure. So they went out and did Carly Simon, Leo Sayer, Hoyt Axton, doing actual sessions as a rhythm section.
Wow, I had no idea.
And killed it. I mean, the level of musicianship was so deep. They did a great job. I mean, I had a lot of confidence in them anyway. And I mean, they were a little wary in the beginning, but that's only because it was a different, not that they hadn't had studio experience, but when you got Richard Perry yelling at you, it's a different world. Red light goes on. Richard's eating lunch and he's pointing at you.
Yeah.
So,
Studio 55.
Pardon?
Doing at Studio 55.
I think we did this at Sunsets. The Hoyt Axton stuff we did at A&M.
Okay.
The other stuff, I think Leo Sayer stuff, I'm not sure where we did that. I think it might have been United.
Okay.
United Audio, I'm not sure. But they did an incredible job to the point where when we were doing the Living on the Fall Line record, which I think is the least successful album, but to me, the musicianship on there is insane.
Yeah.
And I remember Keith Knudsen, we were listening back to a track, and he said, I dropped a snare drum beat in bar 51. I went, bingo. Welcome to the club. Now, not that you're not a great musician, but the way that you're looking at things now, I think that's set the stage, music-wise, for the Minute by Minute record.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a really cool band to I spent a lot of time over the last few weeks in preparation for this, really listening to the full catalog, and the evolution of the band is really, really incredible because it definitely has much more depth in musicianship as it evolves from, the early.
But it was remember, the musicianship was already there too.
Sure.
That's the thing. There's, There's nothing like
Yeah, I mean, China Grove is a great tune,
it's iconic.
Yeah. But I hear what you're saying though, and I think it connects some dots for me as just a fan of the music, as far as the development. I had no idea that they were doing sessions as well as a rhythm section.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I mean, Tyran's probably the most underrated bass player on the planet.
Yeah.
That guy's frightening.
Yeah.
Again, everybody just, whatever was in there,
Yeah.
it's like it got the opportunity to come out.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you joined the Doobie Brothers and you had to call Michael McDonald to come out and do this thing, he had to learn like the whole catalog in a week because like we
rehearsed 10 hours a day for 7 days.
Wow. Because he didn't have like any Michael McDonald sung tunes yet in the band. So he was just
not at
learning
all.
Tom's part, and then obviously Pat could still sing whatever songs he was doing or any harmonies that he was doing.
Yeah, and Pat stepped up
Yeah.
to do some of the tunes that Tommy was doing.
Yeah.
But again, sometimes you got to make a command decision.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Well, I would love to start with taking it to the streets. By that point, Michael was, well established in the band and singing and one of my favorite all-time Doobie Brothers songs. Do you remember much about the session where you recorded that song?
There wasn't anything extraordinary about it other than the fact that it was a great tune.
Yeah.
And approaching it more from a session player, what are the right parts for this?
Yeah.
As opposed to, yes, it was a band, but it really, when I heard that, I thought this needs this approach.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you definitely like fill in all those gaps, right? 'Cause you're coming in like right in between like the chord changes of the piano and the vocals, and then kind of doing like the, some rhythms like kind of strumming in between. And
whatever it takes.
Was that a Strat on that one? It certainly sounds like it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that DI at that point, or do you think that was into an amp?
I did as much as I could DI.
Okay.
I just like the cleanliness and
Yeah. Well, I'd love to listen to it. Let's listen to it together.
Sure.
and see if it shakes anything loose about the that session.
You don't know me, but I'm your brother. I was raised here in this living hell. You don't know my kind in your world. Fairly soon, the time will tell. You telling me the things you're gonna do for me. I ain't blind and I don't like what I think I see. Taking it to the street. Taking it to the street. Taking it to the street. No more need for running. Taking it to the street.
Did you do a little whammy bar dive there at the end?
Well, I figured, what the hell,
Yeah.
And the rhythm part that you're hearing,
Yep.
again, I'm thinking like a saxophone player.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like a horn section.
Yeah.
What does it need? That's what it.
Yeah.
That's what it needs.
Yeah. Now, I could hear listening to it in this context. They put a bunch of reverb on your guitar too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because
Well, I love surf music, so the more reverb, the better.
Yeah. Are you a spring reverb fiend, or any reverb will do?
Oh, I mean, if I'm doing a gig with Dean Torrance and the Surf City All Stars,
Yeah.
Yep, dual showman, jazz master, Fender reverb.
Yeah. It's interesting how, for certain types of music, the reverb has to be in front of the amp in order to get the intensity that you need to get that sound, as opposed to being after the preamp, or, how you might find it in a mid-60s Fender or something like that. Yeah, it's such a great. I mean, I hear what you're saying is like the sort of the restraint of the session musician finding the perfect spaces for it, but it's a great rhythm tone, and
it was a well-crafted song. Teddy did a great job.
Yeah, really, really beautiful. The other one I wanted to talk about is "Take Me in Your Arms." Now, this is Stampede, so quite a bit before, and I think the sound was more rock and less R&B at that point, as far as kind of what was, sort of quintessential Doobie Brothers. Do you remember at that point, you said you were already in the band? Do you remember much about that session or that record?
Nothing, again, extraordinary. It was a song that everybody loved.
Yeah.
And I thought this would be a great song for the Doobies to do.
Yeah. Because it was a cover song, right? It was
yeah. Kim Weston did the original, but Tommy had such a great voice.
Yeah.
I know it's going to sound weird, but Tommy's voice always reminded me of the lead singer in the Spinners.
Okay.
Had that wonderful ability to be joyous, syncopated at the same time. It was just something about it. Anyway, Tommy's a tremendous musician.
And he's got a little bit of that rock and roll growl, though, to it.
Well, there you go. And then Teddy said, I want you to do the solo. I said, okay.
Yeah.
Roll it.
Yeah.
And that was that Strat, that one that I had built in the parking lot.
Gosh, man, that thing is just the hit maker, isn't it? It has like this stringiness to it that's like perfect. It's like captures the best essence of like what a Strat tone is. And it sounds to me on that one that it's either a 2 or a 4. Like some of the in between positions to me.
I think it was, one of those.
I wonder with the pickups being like slightly overwound, because you said you thought maybe they were in like the 7K range, because sometimes the challenge when you get into those 2 and 4 positions is they lose some output in like some of the sort of the balls of the, let's say like a neck pickup or something like that. But it seems like yours is so forward, and that can be hard to capture sometimes in those positions, especially on a lead tone.
Well, people like my pickups, so I suppose I should go into business. But
maybe you should.
Don't have the time.
Well, let's listen to a little of that song and the solo on "Take Me in Your Arms." Again, you did it again where you did this thing, went a little outside for just a second, then you resolve it with those great triads and just beautifully.
Well, I want to make it interesting,
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool. Do you remember what amp that was, or you think that might have also been DI?
That was a Deluxe Reverb.
That was a Deluxe Reverb
because that's what I use live.
Okay.
One of the things that in the Doobies that we did. We started when we played the Olympic Theater. I said, guys, it's just too loud. Mm-hmm. I mean, the PA guys are pulling their hair out because everything's bleeding into the microphones.
Yeah.
It's just too damn loud. So why don't we set our amplifiers up in front, facing each other, like where the vocal monitors are. That way, the only guy that's going to get blown off the stage is yourself. You're sort of self-governing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's going into the PA mics, the vocal mics.
Mm-hmm.
And the drummers came up with the idea of putting a 15-inch speaker in the drum thrones
mm-hmm.
to monitor the bass. So now all of a sudden, there's nothing coming through any of the vocal mics except vocals.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the guys who are mixing front of house can use effects.
Mm-hmm.
They can really do a brilliant job of mixing the vocals.
Right.
And we did that for 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
And that amp was a deluxe reverb, 112. I mean, I had the head over here, and the speaker cabinet there, but that's it.
So you just rehoused one into like a bandmaster head or something like that, and then
No, it was a deluxe reverb head that I'd put into a separate cabinet.
Okay.
And then I put the amp there and put my feet up on it, and that's it.
Perfect. And were these typically like the mid '60s era or the Silverface era ones, or what were you?
It really didn't make much difference because by this time I was having Paul do all the amps.
Okay, he was just modifying.
It didn't make any difference what it looked like.
And was he
the guts?
Okay. And was he typically changing speakers in them for you as well?
No, I was a big fan of JBL.
Okay.
I just love the way JBL speakers sound.
Any particular model that you were favoring?
D120.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. I mean, it's one of the best speakers for clean tone of all time.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one other song that's from the Doobies is "How Did the Fools Survive?" And this is one that I wouldn't say that I had paid particular attention to in our conversations before this. You had mentioned this as one that stuck out to you, and I've spent a lot of time over the last few weeks listening to it, and it's an incredible song, and I kind of regret that I had overlooked it on this album.
It's always good to be able to discover something new.
Absolutely. So why does this have a particular importance to you? And can you tell us about what you remember about the making of it?
Well, it was a long fade. I thought, okay, well, here's an opportunity. Have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went into one of the smaller studios at Amigo with Don Landy, because I guess Ted was doing something else. They were doing something else. So it was just him and I. And I thought, okay, let's see what happens. And I thought, this is a long solo. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to start, I want to dance around the chords. I don't want to play the straight stuff. I want to see if there's any, I want to use the opportunity. It's almost like a guitar lesson.
Yeah.
I want to really see what might be the art of the possible. And just played it through.
Yeah.
From top to bottom.
Yeah. And was this just like a one take and that was it? That was it?
Yeah.
Wow.
After it was over, Don said, what do you think? I said, well, it's what I want.
Yeah.
I'm happy with it. And Don said, well, you should be. I went, okay.
Yeah. So it was just you. It was just done like as an overdub.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And then I would presume once you took it to the band, they were all sold on it as well then. And
in the beginning, they weren't sure. I guess Michael wasn't sure whether he wanted to have a solo at the end.
Uh-huh.
But I think Ted said, you really need this.
Yeah.
It can't just fade. And this is really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a great song. Again, I'm really pleased that we were able I was able to be reintroduced to it. I'd love to listen to it with you a little bit if you don't mind.
Sure.
All right, let's have a listen.
Oh,
Oh, that's lovely. I love how
That was direct in the console.
Yeah,
Just plug in. Play.
Yeah, I can definitely hear. I never heard that. Maybe some reverb they put on it or
Yeah.
something like that. But I really like how you're kind of modulating between. You go a little outside, and then you resolve it like a blues. like a
Well,
blues.
sure.
That was really
You have to bring it as much as there are. You want to show your musicianship. You don't want to lose your listener.
Right.
You don't want to go so far out that they're running to catch up.
Right.
So every once in a while you come back to some familiarity so you can take deep breath and then keep going with you.
Yeah. Well,
and by the way, the secret to that track is Tyrant.
Yeah.
The bass playing on that. And he came up with that part. I mean, that's his.
Yeah.
I don't think that track would be anywhere near what it is if it hadn't been for Tyrant playing on that. Unbelievable. That opening line?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Yeah, just playing off the piano and it's just, yeah.
But that was fun. That was just fun to sit back and see what happens.
So for the very last part of our listening experience today, I want to come back to your solo record that you released in 2022. So just a couple of years ago. First one you've ever done as a solo artist. And we listened to a little bit of one of the songs on there. My Old School sounded amazing. But this one I was listening to when I was kind of listening through the catalog and listening through your songs. That really struck me. It has this amazing clean tone. It's got some beautiful sort of like beautifully processed kind of guitar pads, and then just some amazing guitar solo and melody work on it. And it's a song Juliet. Can you tell us a little bit about the song, a little bit more about the record? We're going to have, of course, all the links and everything like that in the description of the video so people can check it out. But hearing it from the horse's mouth is always best.
Well, the song is kind of like a tone poem in that it's a recurring theme. But one of my motivations for it was in the same way, is there are certain songs that I think define certain guitars. I mean, if somebody were to say, what is the iconic Telecaster song? It would have to be Buckaroo by Buck Owen and the Buckaroos. You listen to that, and that defines the sound of the Telecaster. So I thought, well, the Stratocaster has a beautiful voice. The problem is so many people process it and do so much stuff. What about just letting it sing, letting it use its voice? So that was one of the reasons why I had put together Juliet and written it, because I wanted to feature that sound. And C.J. Vanston, who was my partner on that, we would write our songs. We'd put up a drum machine and we play. And that's how we write. We write on the fly. And Juliet was written on the fly. I mean, I sort of knew where I wanted it to go, but I had so much confidence in CJ's playing and his knowledge that we literally wrote that on the fly. But I wanted it to sound, what does a Stratocaster really sound like? What should it sound like? To me, that's it.
I think you did one of the things that the Stratocaster is best, because you're using a lot of open string voicings, on that, and getting to hear.
Let it do what it does.
Yeah, and that just is one of the, like if you do an open string, like F sharp or something like that, like those are really beautiful. Although of course the note choices are all really great, but yeah, you really get to hear absolutely the essence of what makes that instrument.
And I was thinking about the Ventures, who were my favorite band ever, and I was in their fan club when I was a kid. Luckily, I ended up playing with them and producing records for them and stuff.
Yeah.
This is a modern Ventures record. Melody, straight ahead, clean, defined, no ambiguity.
Yeah, it is great. And I'd love to listen to a little clip of it with you.
Sure.
And give the listeners and viewers a little taste.
So I love classical guitar.
So was that a real classical guitar or was that the Roland?
That's that.
Holy smokes, really?
That thing is amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I thought for sure you were going to tell me you had like a Ramirez or something like that. And
I'm sorry?
You had like I thought you were going to tell me you had a Ramirez or something like, you know,
Oh, no.
fancy classical.
The only time I ever played a Ramirez is when I repaired one for Andres Segovia when I
Wow.
was working at Dan Armstrong's shop. Yeah.
Wow. What did it need? Like bracing or?
No, one of the tuning machines broke.
Okay.
And luckily, the violin, cello repair guy across the street, Charles Pawnee, for some reason he had a set.
Right, because you can't just replace one. You have to replace the whole side.
Yeah,
right?
you got to replace the whole side.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that sounded incredible. And was that still was the Roland or the multi-effect box for all that?
Yeah.
For all the effects?
Yep.
And for the amplifier sounds as well?
No amp.
Just DI in with that?
Yeah.
Wow. All the delay processing was from that as well?
Yep.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah, it sounds. When I designed it or helped design it, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
You know.
And is this is still something that Boss and Roland produce to this day?
No, they don't make it anymore.
Okay. We went out of production like in the 90s or early 2000s?
Oh, before that.
Okay, in the 80s.
And then they had a bad run of capacitors.
Okay.
And so most of the M810s have died.
Okay.
Except there is a gentleman, a Russian electronics guy here in LA who can resurrect them.
Really?
So I've been turning my friends on to this.
All right. Well, maybe there's going to be people going on reverb.com and buying a bunch of.
I think I saw something on reverb.com about this gentleman.
Okay. And if it's just capacitors, I have to imagine that it's not something that would, unless it's like.
Well, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Got to go through everything.
Sure, I'm sure it's a bunch of layers of different PCBs and all that stuff.
But it's it's such a beautiful sounding unit.
Yeah, well, clearly, it really just sounds amazing in the context you were just using it in.
Well, and again, I don't have to carry a classical guitar.
Yeah, yeah. And did you go to a studio to record this, or did you do it from home, or?
Yeah, we did it in CJ's studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, Skunk, I'm just so appreciative to you and all of your influences on the way that we hear pop music, whether it's through the Doobie Brothers, whether it's through Steely Dan, Joni Mitchell, Dolly Parton, Donna Summer. You're a legendary guitar player, and as I've said earlier, the influence has been felt, and I think that a lot of people picked up the instrument because of things that they heard or were inspired by your sensibilities.
That's very
kind. To end the conversation today, I like to do something with you that I try to do with all of our guests, was show them a few clips of themselves from days past and some photos, and just get their impressions of kind of what was going on in those particular things, if you don't mind. I'll grab my phone here and let me show you a couple things. So first thing, we'll start with this photo, Steely Dan. And it looks like you all...
Was it Village?
That was at Village Recorder?
Mm-hmm.
So in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And do you remember what room that was in?
Studio A.
Studio A.
Yeah.
And do you remember what you guys might have been recording right here?
No, actually, I don't.
And was this when you guys were preparing for a recording? Would this have been like a fairly common sort of scene right here, or was this sort of staged for the purposes of the photograph? Or
no, we were obviously working on something.
Yeah. And what year do you think this might have been? Like early 70s, mid 70s?
That would definitely be early 70s, yeah.
Yeah. And did you guys do any with like records at that particular studio like
Yeah.
at that time?
Yeah. Yep.
So this could have been, if this were early 70s, it could have been Can't Buy a Thrill, or it could have been
It was one of the first 3 records, that's for sure.
okay. Awesome. Yeah, well, definitely you guys are sitting on the road cases. I guess that's how they were back then.
Hey,
All right, here's another one that you talked about volume pedals earlier. Here's an ad that Showbud had put out, presumably in some sort of guitar magazine.
right.
Was this something where they would just say, "Hey, we're going to take your photo," or was it like, "Send us a photo, we're going to put
I
you"?
have
in a
no
magazine?
idea. And when the ad came out, I had really nothing to do with it, but Showbud was very nice to me. They built me a beautiful Super Pro
Uh-huh.
and put my name and mother of pearl on it. I mean,
Wow.
that's every country musician's dream, right?
Right.
And I love Showbud, and to this day, I still play Showbud.
Do you use their volume pedals at all, or is it?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
It's the biggest volume pedal in town, but they're very robust.
Well, they're very strange too, as they run on a piece of thread that turns the shaft and the potentiometer.
Yeah. So kind of like
Old school.
what Ernie Ball ended up doing as well, I think, where they
And the old DeArmond stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They also had some interesting impedances to get geeky. You know, some of those Showbuds were like 1 meg, you know.
Yeah, the volume control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas typically now it would be rare if you found something that wasn't 250K, or if it was for low impedance, maybe 25K.
But I like the 1 meg because I think the taper is much smoother.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, it seems like, I guess if you're dealing with passive guitar pickups, I guess most of the amps would be 1 meg on the input impedance. Kind of matches up with that. And then here's another photo of you with an Epiphone. It looks like is this a signature guitar, or is this just one that you signed?
Yeah.
So what was the signature instrument?
It was an acoustic guitar.
Uh-huh.
I had a lot of conversations with Jim Rosenberg, who was the president of Epiphone.
Uh-huh.
And he said, would you like to do a signature guitar? I said, yeah, but let's do one that's affordable.
Yeah.
That was the thing. I mean, sure, I could spend $1 bazillion and have a guitar that's $6,000.
Yeah.
It's not going to do anybody any good.
Yeah.
So we designed a guitar to be, I believe it was under 600.
Okay.
So that it would record well.
Okay.
That was my main thing.
And it was an acoustic.
Yeah.
Okay, an electric
Single
acoustic.
cutaway round hole.
Okay. And did it have like a piezo as well?
I'm sorry?
Did it have like some sort of piezo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll dig up a photo of the actual guitar and make sure that it's on screen here so people can check it out. And now I want to show you one more photo, and then we'll move in to some video clips. Here you are with some real legends also in the session scene. You got Lee Sklar, Steve Lukather. Where was this taken? Do you remember what this was?
Yeah, it was a restaurant on Ventura Boulevard.
Okay.
It's CJ's favorite restaurant. The Black something.
Okay.
It's I know it because I see it, so I know where to go.
Okay.
I don't look at the name. But yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Was this
The Crew.
Was this, you think, in maybe 20 years ago?
No.
15 years ago?
No, I was probably 5-6 years ago.
Lee is hard to date because he always has the same beard and everything. And now Luke has allowed his hair to go gray. And awesome. Well, let's look at a few of these clips that I had. Here's one of you. Looks like an instructional video, but I'd love to know more context.
Thanks. I mean, would you like to be, you want to play like Chet Atkins? Or if you'd like to go out and get some hair extensions and, some tight pants and go down to Melrose, we could help you with...
Do you remember shooting this video?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we did a series of vignettes for different kinds of styles of music.
And was this just sold as like just an instructional video that you could buy at like a guitar store or?
Yeah, a company had come to me, and I said, "Sure, why not?"
Do you remember where you recorded this?
Yeah, it was in my house.
It was in your house
when I was living in Bel Air.
Wow. And do you remember this guitar?
Oh yeah, that's the original guitar that we used at Roland to design the guitar synthesizer, because I built guitars. Was using a regular guitar made out of wood, but there were tracking problems, and I wasn't sure whether it was the electronics or whether it might have been different resonant peaks and valleys in the wood. So I built one out of cement, built one out of brick, I built one out of wallboard. I built guitars out of everything I could think of.
Yeah.
And finally decided on plexiglass, because I remember Dan Armstrong, he had his original design.
Yeah.
And that was the laboratory for the guitar synth. And I ended up loving it.
Do you have an opinion about the highly debated tone wood topic? Whether the wood makes that much difference in terms of
acoustically, definitely. Electronically, I'm not sure. I've never been convinced of that, because the electronics of an electric guitar are so overwhelming.
Yeah. So you think like the pickups would have the most influence potentially?
Oh, it's 99% of it.
That's sort of the microphone for the guitar, so to speak.
Well, it is a microphone.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a diaphragm. It uses a string to trigger the voltage from the moving.
Yeah.
It is the moving coil.
Yeah.
In the magnetic field.
Yeah. Here's another one for you. This is a fun one that I came upon that I'm curious about what you remember about it.
Oh yeah. Warner Brothers had asked me to do a kind of a guitar anthology, I guess. And so I went around the world playing with all my favorite guitar players.
Wow.
And the idea was that nothing was written. Everything was spontaneous.
Right.
And that was Mark Knopfler. We talked about when we were kids, we didn't have any money, nobody could afford a guitar, so we would go down to the music store and buy the latest Fender catalog and smell the pages. That was as close as we were going to get to anything like that. And it was fun going around playing with everybody.
Who were some other players that you ended up...
Lukather, Hank Marvin.
Wow.
I couldn't get over to Hank, so we used a satellite relay.
Yeah.
He was in Australia.
Yeah.
I was in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
No, I was in London. And we played together. He couldn't hear me.
Yeah.
But he had to hope that I knew the part.
Yeah.
And so we did...
did it work?
FBI together.
Wow.
Which is one of my favorite Shadow songs.
Yeah.
Let's see who else. Eric Johnson, Brian Setzer, and just a whole bunch of guys that I dearly love.
Yeah. That was how long was this series, or was this like a...
We got it down to about an hour and a half.
Okay.
There's 20 hours of it.
Wow.
So maybe someday.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like each one could be its own,
Another guitar player on that series is Lindsey Buckingham.
Okay.
I got to tell you, that guy is an amazing guitar player, and I don't think he gets any credit, or as much credit as he should. His approach to the instrument is unique and phenomenal.
Yeah.
And again, the idea was nobody knows where we're going.
Yeah.
We're here. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
And he did a beautiful job.
Yeah.
Of thinking, improvising.
Yeah. Well, if you listen to those Fleetwood Mac
Wonderful player.
stuff, I mean, his sensibilities on overdubs and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. He's a tremendous player.
It transcends what a lot of session musicians do. I mean, like I think of just sort of like on Dreams, and he's kind of got this arpeggio thing that's building with the song, and it's just like such a smart
Yeah, he
idea.
deserves a lot more credit as a player.
Absolutely does. I 100% agree. All right, and we talked about this last clip a little bit throughout the interview, but I'd love to get your take on it, just seeing it one more time.
And I'm never going back to my old
Yeah, that's that Orphan Telecaster.
It has a Strat neck on it. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yep. Looks like a 50 Strat neck of some
I have
kind.
no idea. I just refretted it with huge Gibson bass frets
Uh-huh.
and then crowned everything down.
Wow. Well, I guess at that time you really could only, if you were getting a contemporary Strat or even a vintage one.
That might have been a dumpster dive
Really
out at Fender. Yeah,
So you just drive down to Fullerton or
yeah,
yeah.
because I knew all those guys down there, and I just go out back and see what they were throwing away.
Wow. Well, Skunk, it has been an honor and a pleasure to be sitting across from you, talking to you about all this incredible music. And again, I can't thank you enough for your contribution to music. It's certainly been an influence on me as a guitar player. And I know I speak for many people out there that you've just been tremendous in sort of shaping us and just the world of music and guitar players through your work. So thank you so
Again,
much.
You're very kind.
Yeah, for everything that you've
But,
done. And
thank you.
Yeah, and we're just so happy to have you here. And of course, as I said, all the links for Jeff's work, the songs we talked about today, Jeff's new album or Skunk's new album, you should check it out in the description below, and you'll be able to get all the information that you need and get you right to the album itself, so you can purchase, download, or stream wherever it is that you get your music.
Thank you.
All right.